All right, well, hello and welcome to the DSM Forward Ask the Expert series. I'm Mike Caldwell with the Greater Des Moines Partnership. The series is presented by the partnership as part of our DSM Forward initiative. And our goal with this is really to help business leaders connect, share, and exchange ideas with each other related to moving forward into this next phase of reopening. The partnerships publish industry playbooks, business playbooks, FAQs, and other information. It's all available at dsmpartnership.com/DSM Forward. I encourage you to check that out. And if there's anything else we can do as the partnership, please feel free to reach out and ask. Today, I'm joined by Brad Schoenfelder of R&R Realty Group and Tom Ruprecht of Ryan Construction. And today, we're going to be talking about the construction industry. For those of you on the call today, thank you for joining us. I should have said construction and development industry, my apologies. Thank you for joining us. Logistically, if you would, just mute your mics, turn off your video if you'd like. And if you would open up the chat window in Zoom, what we're gonna be doing today is if we could just have everybody use the chat window as their way of communicating and asking questions of our participants here on the panel. I would greatly appreciate that. So with that, I'm going to stop the share, bring us all up, and let's see here. Try to get things cleaned up. So to begin with, I'd like to ask, and Tom, let's start with you. If you could just give us a couple minutes, tell us a little bit about, what you and your company do, and then really kind of talk about where things stand for you as far as getting back to work and getting back to whatever our new normal is going to be.
Yeah, thanks, Mike, and thanks for the Greater Des Moines Partnership for allowing me to speak here. And just a correction, I think you mentioned that I worked for Ryan and Brad was with R&R, so we have to flip-flop those a little bit, but that was kind of entertaining.
All right, sorry about that.
Yeah, my role really for R&R on the development side is I oversee all the development activity for R&R's land holdings, both in Greater Des Moines and in the Omaha markets, which most of our developments that R&R does is on a speculative basis, mainly in the office and industrial markets. And I also do oversee R&R's construction subsidiary, Icon, which manages really all the interior improvements that we do for the entire R&R portfolio buildings. So where things stand for us and related to the impacts of COVID-19 now that we've been kind of experiencing this for some time is really just communication. I think that's pretty much for everybody, but it's never been more important than now during these uncertain times. Just really having those frequent, open and honest conversations with our owners, contractors, cities, whether we're doing development projects, and our subcontractors, suppliers, and customers in the construction and ongoing operations of our properties. For development, though, we really didn't see significant impacts as it related to schedule. We had two projects that were in the middle of construction on a speculative basis, both office buildings, and really two different contractors and really no impact on schedule for that. Probably the most significant impact is kind of what are companies looking for in an office building. Obviously that is going to change drastically. We had broke ground on this speculative office building in Omaha back in fall of 19. And then obviously with the pandemic really hitting its stride probably in early March, we really took a step back and we had the opportunity to change some things. And it just seemed that a healthy building is where people are moving to. So we took the initiative to change kind of the air quality of that building, looking at redoing some things as hospital grade with the HVAC systems, getting a touchless environment as best as we can in the properties, whether it's entering the properties to using the restrooms. Looked at all the materials, make sure they're germ resistant, and just really making sure that all the technology that we need in this building really to assist us in providing for that healthy building. And as a relation to the construction side of things on our Icon, again, no significant impacts. We had 15 projects going on. These are short turnaround projects within 60 days. And with that little couple of issues with some lead time items on materials, we were still able to conduct business as usual. So again, probably the most significant things that we're seeing is really how do we perform these construction activities in these multi-tenanted office buildings. Safety has always been a priority for us and continues to be now that we have to follow these guidelines with the CDC guidelines as well as state. So we really look at safety, points of egress, communication, not only with our tenants, but with our contractors, and just kind of getting everybody on the same page because we're all in this together. So lastly, we just continue to look at other technology and innovative ways to assist us through these impacts.
All right, thanks. Brad, and maybe we could ask you to do the same here.
Sure, I'd be happy to. And let me also start by saying thanks, Mike, for the opportunity to be here and for what the partnership's been doing in terms of, everybody sharing thoughts and lessons learned, and, how do we continue to rise together to improve a community that we're all so proud of. So I'm Brad Schoenfelder, and as Tom mentioned, I'm the president of Ryan's Midwest region. So my role is basically three parts. It's business development, it's the real estate development side, and then it's also about, where do we fit in terms of strategic direction. Ryan Companies is also a privately held company. We've got 16 office locations around the U.S. Our first one outside of our corporate headquarters was here in Iowa about 22 years ago, about the same time that I joined. And, at that time, we were probably about a $250 million business, and today we do about $2.5 billion. And in that 80 years, we've really grown into what we refer to as a fully integrated group. So we have development, we have our own capital markets, so we can, provide our own equity and financing. We've got A&E. We also have the construction side, and then we also have property management. So about half of that $2.5 billion are things that we build for others in a construction management role, and then the other 50% are really tied into the items that we develop for ourselves and for others. And we do a variety of things, but we tend to focus on the industrial, retail, office, build-to-suit, healthcare, senior living, and multifamily. And just have an incredible team of 1,400 individuals who are passionate about what they do, but most importantly how they do it. And I think that's what's like our community. You've seen this in many different ways. Is really how people remain to be flexible, agile, and really adjust to something that, as we've all said before, really is unprecedented. So I think what I wanted to do is just talk a little bit about the construction side. We can then also talk a little bit about the development side, and then just open it up for questions. Like Tom mentioned, I think we've all been fortunate that there hasn't been the slowdown that maybe everybody had anticipated, like we all felt when, 2008. So, there have been projects that have been put on pause. There have been projects that maybe have been, put on hold. But the encouraging thing is that if you look at, employment in the construction side, it's really come back dramatically, even more than the general unemployment. The revenue still seems to be there, and there are still people who are kicking off new projects in a post-COVID world. I'll talk a little bit more in the Q&A session about, what are some of the things that we're doing amongst the COVID. But, if we really didn't have a strong workforce who has figured out how to keep buildings going, how to keep job sites going in a really safe manner, we wouldn't be as fortunate as we are as a community or as an industry. So, and then on the development side, I think the really positive side is that there are opportunities out there. Banks are lending money due to some of the things that are happening with fiscal and monetary stimulus. There's an ample amount of liquidity out there for the projects that are in the works. And I think the thing too that's different now than was before in the recession is that, for really strong projects with good merits, there's plenty of opportunity there for financing to keep them going forward. So the industrial is probably the strongest market. And, I think you've heard we've kicked off a couple projects in this market along those fronts and also nationally. And then, maybe I'll just wrap it up and say both locally and nationally, we have projects that have continued on in just about every sector. And we have projects that either we're working on in pre-construction or design with a variety of partners that are getting ready to move forward. So I think we're fortunate for that. And I don't think we'd be as fortunate had, our industry not be deemed as being essential to keep it moving forward. So with that, maybe I'll just pause there, Mike, and turn it back to you.
All right. Yeah, so we have a question that came in from the group already. It says, has there been any early indication of what companies are moving towards related to new construction? I've heard both ways, shrinking because of work from home, and then the other side needing larger spaces because of the open workspace concept that may be a thing of the past. I know this is a very dynamic world, but I'd love to hear both your thoughts, maybe a little more detail about what are you hearing? What are you seeing? What do you think's options? I don't know. Brad, you want to start?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I think this is probably the area that's going to be most talked about in the coming months, because I think companies are trying to understand, who they are culturally, and then how does their real estate respond to that. So what do they expect for collaboration? What do they expect for innovation, and how does, those collisions and those interactions with people, how much of the work is transactional work? And Tom mentioned it earlier in terms of just how do you communicate? So in some places, people need that space to communicate and innovate in the way that they do it. So I think there are a lot of companies out there, including ours, that, keep asking that question of who do we want to be in the future as we re-enter? I think the other part of this is more about how does the employee, or how does Brad, want to identify with the place where I go to work, what I do there, because it's not just about the work, it's about the connectivity that I have to it. So I think it's easy to look at, okay, hoteling, and are we going to hotel or are we not going to hotel? But I think it's more difficult than just saying culturally, who do we want to be, and how does that impact it? So I think that's probably the biggest question that people are asking themselves.
Yeah, I can't disagree with Brad. I agree with him. And we have almost 400 tenants that, it's a big job, but we continue to communicate with them. And honestly, it's almost like a kind of everybody wait and see. I think that's been the normal reaction. We obviously have leases turning over that we're working with our tenants, every one of them, and helping them through about, those changes that Brad had talked about culturally, and what do you want to do differently? And so, we partner with a lot of furniture providers, and we actually do audits for them to figure out, does your space work, and does it meet the CDC guidelines, and what can we do to help change those things for you? So we provide those free services for our tenants. And yeah, it's everybody's kind of saying, well, what is everybody else doing, type of thing. And that's always kind of the interesting thing. You just put things on hold. And, it kind of reminds me back when we had that Great Recession. Everybody just kind of sit still and let's just wait this thing out and see what's happening tomorrow. So we got to then just react as quickly as we can, help those that really want to make those changes that they can make. I think it also helps to speed up decision making. So people were kind of looking at hoteling, or whether they were working offsite, and isolating those workforces. And that's, they've kind of had some companies wanting to ramp those things up. So we worked with them, and we're kind of hoping for that net zero, where we're going to get those square footages per employee are going to increase. We've seen those being depressed way below kind of the 200. Now we're kind of seeing that being pushed back up. So we're going to see a lot more of those areas growing. It's too early to tell where we're going to fall out throughout this whole pandemic. But I guess what I've learned from history would mean that, yeah, I think we're going to continue to see that office is an important product to have. It's a great way for businesses to show off their culture, show who they are, and have a place of community where they can have their workforce.
We did a call recently with several executives from large scale companies, Wells Fargo, Principal, Nationwide. They all use the word hybrid, that it's going to be a little of both. It's going to be expanded workspaces for those who want or need to be in the office, but a flexibility for those who cannot be in the office or prefer not to be. I think the thing that I've heard over and over is we've learned that people can work remote. And I don't think everybody was there. I don't think anybody realized how well it would work for most companies to go ahead and go remote. almost across the board, I've heard generally positive surprise. So I think in a way it might speed things up as far as that, let's wait and see, like the '09 wait and see, to say, well, you can flex a lot. There's a lot of flexibility to be had. Tom, I wanted to go back to a comment you made about healthy buildings, because to me that's part of it. It's not just space, but it's health. And you mentioned, I think, HVAC. I've heard that a lot, and the touchless. Can you just talk a little bit about what options are out there that the industry has already developed or can take advantage of that may weigh in going forward?
Yeah, that's the art of building a spec building, because you have to kind of figure out what does the market want, and every business is so different. So we had the opportunity to kind of really break those down to kind of what we think that the market wants. And I know this building being in Omaha is probably no different than what the Greater Des Moines wants, but we knew that air quality was #1 priority, I think, by a lot of the experts they talk about. And so we had the opportunity to reconfigure the HVAC system. We kind of hear a lot about this hospital grade. So it was about being able to get the filtration systems changed on the HVAC equipment to go to these MERV 13, which ASHRAE has already approved as a air quality standard. As well as we have opportunities when we do the tenant fit for each individual tenants that we can add even additional air quality controls. As far as a touchless, that's already been kind of started out anyway with a lot of these sensors, motion sensors with the lightings. We start seeing more of that with the ADA requirements with the doors for people to come in. You have to hit a button. Really took a man just to be able to do the hand wave sensor motion, so that now people can come into the buildings and be able to open the buildings without really touching anything. And we've kind of taken that to the next step and use that for all the common area restrooms, where now everybody has the ability, they can open it remotely as well. And then of course, all the hand dispenser, soap dispensers, water and towels, we're kind of already kind of going that way anyway. It was just kind of an easy transition. And then just really using that technology, continue to use the sensors and whatever things that we can do with dashboards and monitors and just that communication that kind of remind people on the operations that their things are being cleaned and it's being sanitized, and everybody can come in and feel safe because they're sharing the building with other people. The one thing that we haven't really tackled and we've debated is these elevators. I guess we're fortunate that a lot of these buildings that we're building are 3-4 story buildings, so we haven't got to the high rise, but that might be a challenge for some of these high rise buildings. And they're talking about just using technology with calling it on your phone and really just kind of, I guess, treating it as getting in line for Disney World and scheduling those things. But maybe we'll just improve the wellness and everybody can take stairs then at this point. So we still haven't tackled that. Brad probably has a better answer than I do on that.
Brad, your thoughts?
I think Tom hit a lot of them, and I'll end with, it really comes down to a flexible building. And we talk about this, whether it's spec building or it's a custom office to build a suit that you're doing for somebody. It is, how do you create something that is really going to be agile and move and flex with them as a company or the tenants that move? And so I think the more you can do in terms of flow of people, how you're going to communicate, how they're going to communicate with that space, because you might have individuals who say, I only want to come in every couple of weeks, and companies aren't going to create that kind of space. So, I think we're all going to figure out how to do that. And then if an event were to occur, if you think of other international markets, this isn't their first pandemic. But if there were ever another one that would occur, what would we do today? And I think, it's making all of us better at communicating, more agile, and then just how do people flow in and out of spaces? So I think it's going to change the way we do work. But I'm also optimistic that some of those core things that we do every single day in our office space, like collaboration and I would say innovation, is what companies want. So they're going to need that place to do it.
You mentioned the demand for industrial sites. I think a lot of people have been talking about just in general, the number of warehouses, distribution centers, fulfillment centers, without getting into any specifics, but in general, are you both seeing constant or upswinging of demand coming forward for those types of facilities?
You know, maybe I'll go first on this one. I would say the demand, it's really high. It's as strong as it's ever been. You know, I think what you're going to continue to see is the retail industry trying to figure out what their omni-channel footprint's going to look like. You know, they're still going to want and need brick and mortar. But, you know, in essence, it's all about consumer demand. And I think people are doing different things. And even myself today, it's like, you know, if there was a way that I could pick up my stuff curbside and I didn't get all the cardboard at my home when it showed up, I'd be more than happy to go curbside. So the supply chain will keep happening, and we are a consumer society. So, yeah, I think industrial will still remain strong. And you know, probably the last thing I'd add to that is, you know, companies are trying to figure out their last mile. So you'll see more and more on what that last mile looks like. And then I think the really exciting part is people are talking about reshoring of manufacturing. And even those companies and industries that are here in the U.S., they're saying, how do we automate more? And whether that's because we want to be touchless, it could technically be a win-win by bringing more automated high-tech jobs and bringing more jobs and creating, you know, higher pay. So I think, you know, those are some of the positives that will come out of this COVID event, and why we're pretty bullish on the industrial manufacturing side of things.
Yeah.
For me, yeah, Brett, whatever, you know, Brad talked about, I totally agree. I think industrial has been kind of the hot market. I'll just refer back to when this pandemic had really hit. Our activity on the office, you know, where we saw kind of what I said, 60% of people just said, we're stopping right now. We're not even doing anything. Let's put on hold. To 20% said this, we're not doing any, you know, we're just going to terminate. We're not going to make a decision. And the other 20% still move forward. That was in the office market activity. As far as industrial, it actually increased, particularly in this market as well as the Omaha market, so much that we've already released a break ground on another 300,000 square foot fully speculative warehouse building. So we've had the other 500,000 that we have existing already pretty much filled up at this point. So Brad's absolutely right. It's been kind of that demand. We haven't seen any slowing in that, you know, and contractors are busy, as Brad mentioned earlier. You know, I think it's kind of a lagging indicator, but the industrial will continue to be strong. I think if we foresee it to be strong. It also is a true, what I call maybe more of a flex, because in history, when we've had these industrials, we've accommodated these non-conforming uses or these recreational spaces to even officing people who wanted to build a kind of an IT division inside one of these large warehouses. So it's really been kind of the true flex product for us throughout the market.
So in the industrial space specifically, is it pretty much business as usual on design and the way it's implemented, or are there things being considered to be changed because of what we've learned from COVID so far?
Yeah, I guess for me, when we design these speculative buildings, it's, you know, we do multiple entrances, so that kind of helped out with the touchless environment that people now can kind of control. Air quality, all that's done through the tenant improvement build out packages when we build out these buildings. So our buildings, we've looked at them, I don't think we've changed anything. Warehouses are important. They just need floors that are stable and ceilings that don't leak type of things. And so we've added those elements in those things. And so that's really all part of the tenant improvement packages. But we have not really seen a major impact from this COVID, at least compared to the office market.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about job site. I think we see, I mean, Des Moines is blessed to have a tremendous amount of active construction. I live down in East Village, and I think I have 5 projects within 5 blocks of me. 4 of them are big projects. How has the work site changed for the construction industry?
I'm happy to take this one first if you want. So I think maybe one of the 2 of those are projects that we're doing in the East Village. And you know, what I want to start with is what hasn't changed. and that is, safety of our employees, and that safety at the job site is our top priority. And that was probably the biggest thing that we started asking ourselves when we all became aware of the effects of the pandemic and its spread. So, I think like any high-risk activity, one of the first things we do is we get all the best minds together. And so it was really starting there and saying, how are we going to do our work differently? And how do you social distance? And, I think, and maybe this is just second nature to me because I've been, talking about it for 3 months. But some of it is simple stuff. First and foremost, asking yourself, am I healthy today when I get up, and going through that checklist? So we've gone through extensive training just to get people into that subconscious habit. Like, should I be exposing anybody? Some job sites we're doing temperature checks. Some job sites we're actually starting proactive testing on, just to continue to, make people aware they may be asymptomatic and they don't know it. And one of the things that we implemented almost instantly is only essential craftspeople and staff that would be on the job site. So I love my steel-toed boots. I don't get to wear them as much as I used to. I love being on job sites. That's where I started. But, not being able to go there was the right thing to do. And, we had a lot of discussions about who should and shouldn't be. So it's that. It is things like microbial hand washing stations, getting people to social distance on site. And it's all those simple things we've all learned, and how to slow it and to dampen the curve. But I'll end with this. I think in a lot of aspects, when you're challenged to figure out how to do it differently in tough environments, you figure it out. And I think in the future, we'll be healthier on our job sites. Just like we talked about healthier buildings, we'll have, healthier folks that are out there that, we're just all becoming more aware of the effects of contact and what that means.
I guess for our construction company, and I'll talk about as far as the interiors when we're inside these multi-tenanted office buildings, and again, safety has always been our concern, and we've had those CDC guidelines and the state initiatives, continue to follow those by collaborating together with our subs and our suppliers. So it's kind of that hand washing stations and social distancing is so important. We're very fortunate that we don't really come into that from time to time. But we continue to monitor that with the safety of not only the contractors, but our customers and people are walking in. I will mention one thing that's been, I guess, a positive note for some of these quick turnaround TIs is really working with the municipalities and the cities. For instance, West Des Moines, where you have to have inspectors on the site, and they've been working with us to be able to take pictures and send those pictures in, which we can get approvals done fairly quickly and limiting the amount of social contacting. So that's been a great positive, and hopefully something we can do more in the future.
Yeah, I hope to hear more of that, because I've heard quite a few situations across industries where being, I won't say pushed, but moved to doing things mobile remote, people are finding great productivity. And I think about inspection departments, which at times can get overloaded, especially in our busy seasons. That's a lot to ask of some of these inspectors. I hope to see more of that. We're seeing it in many, many industries. Before I go to the next question, I just want to remind our participants, please ask questions in the chat area. We'd love to hear your thoughts on what you'd like to ask. I want to go back and ask you about supply chains. Some industries have had a lot of impact on supply chain. Have you seen supply chain issues, either short-term or long-term, coming at you as you work on future projects?
Yeah,
Tom, maybe we can start with you.
Yeah, and I'll just talk about the interiors and side of things. And you know, a lot of that stuff is here locally, and we've never really seen those immediately, but as inventory start to slow down, like the millworks and some of the equipment that we're requiring, whether it's the HVAC equipment, adding another 2 weeks or another 3 weeks to the job site by using those equipment. So we really haven't had too much impact. We had the carpet mill shut down a few times, but again, communicating with them and looking for alternatives, that if we had these immediate deadlines, they were all able to come up with alternatives for us. So we've never had those impacts, and we continue to do these interior improvements for some of our clients. And so it really hasn't impacted us too much. And again, it's maybe Brad could probably talk more about it as it relates to the base building side of things, but it's nothing that we've heard that we can't accomplish in the next 60 days.
Yeah, I'd add to that. If you think about, I mean, what we do across the nation, and if we're doing industrial projects with racking systems, or it may be HVAC systems, they could be international companies, but whether it's tile that came from Italy, or it's a mechanical system, or it's racking system, I mean, or it's glass and glazing for an exterior of a building potentially. Our industry is accustomed to dealing with that, and yeah, there have been times and cases, and they'll be moving forward, where there's a challenge in the manufacturing of it, or getting it through customs, or we can't get the right labor. And those are just things you have to work through. We have clients who are understanding to that. And then it, once again, it challenges you to be a little creative and saying, how do you overcome that? So, but I would agree with Tom, and generally, projects are staying on track. And we're having to figure out how to deal with it differently. But there's always that occasional project that's going to be challenged more than others.
Sure. Do you see any cost increases based on some of these, where you are seeing constraints in supply chain? Is anybody trying to take advantage or of cost increase, or just the reality is it does cost more?
I don't think anybody's trying. I mean, I haven't experienced anybody trying to take advantage of it.
Good.
And I think we've all experienced that in our personal lives, where it's like there's been this, hey, let's rally together with that, and let's figure that out. There's more time and energy that we're all having to put into it. I think we all view that we're going to gain from that. So, but in terms of pricing going up because of COVID, we haven't seen that.
Yeah, I would echo that. Not really. You would think that there might be some softening starting to happen, but we haven't seen it, and we can, you also understand that there is a little bit more time and effort that's being put through these safety guidelines that we continue to pass on to our contractors, as well as our subs and suppliers, which then obviously the consumers too through it. So, it's hard to predict the future, but yeah, I think it's, we don't know where we're going to be at 6 months from now, but we've not seen anything from the recent pricings that we did, even when we kicked off the industrial building over in the Omaha market.
That's good to hear. So, to those of us here in Iowa, we see a lot going on with construction and development. How does the real estate market here, how is it perceived by investors outside of Iowa, outside the Midwest? How do they see this marketplace?
Well, we are not really much of a seller of our product. We never really sell, and Brad could probably answer a little bit better than I can, but I do know from talking to some of our partners who we've, I guess, that we partnered in with some of our properties, there are some opportunity buyers out there looking. Obviously, the interest rates have continued to drop, and the futures doesn't look like it's going to go up anytime soon. So I think that there's capital out there. I don't think we saw anything as far as a drop in rates, particularly not in the industrial properties, but maybe a slight drop in the cap rates for the office market by 25 basis points. But I think there's still, I think Brad allude to it, that there's still money out there, and yeah, I think it's still going to be a good buy out there for really those Class A value properties.
So Mike, to your question, and I'll add to what Tom said and agree with that. How have they viewed Iowa? I would say they haven't viewed Iowa any differently than they viewed Iowa in the past. And with low interest rates, the Federal Reserve doing what they're doing in order to continue to have liquidity, banks are wanting to loan money, and they're just looking for, solid tenants. Obviously, the underwriting is different today than it was before in terms of, okay, how are people stressed from COVID? But, you see the stock market still hovering strong and coming back. And there's still a lot of money out there that's interested in good product and in good locations. So I would say Iowa is positioned the same they were before, as it is relative to the nation with what's happening.
Right.
And I think maybe one thing I'd add to that is,
Sure.
there's probably an increased component where people might want to be doing sale leasebacks, because those individuals are saying, hey, maybe we want a little extra capital to get through this and work through it, as opposed to go to their bank or to take out an additional loan. So I think that's something you'll probably see more of potentially. And I think they look at Iowa as a strong market for that. So.
All right. Well, it looks like we've done a pretty good job of answering questions. I haven't seen any more come in. Is there anything else either one of you would like to chat about that we didn't cover before we wrap the call?
No, I guess I would just like to reiterate that, obviously we're a spec developer, and when we went through this recession last time, the Great Recession, we obviously stopped with the speculative buildings for some time. I think it was about 8 years, but I think we're a market-driven developer, and we will always continue to follow the market. And probably office will be a little bit slower than what we've seen it. Industrial, I think we allude to it. It will continue to be a growing asset class, and I think it'll continue to stay in high demand. I don't think there's going to be any slowdown in the construction industry is essential. And just communication. This is really kind of, whether it's remotely or whether we have to do it in offices or I think we're social creatures anyway, and I think it's going to be there to stay. I think a lot of people continue to want to be in their offices and not isolate their workforce. So we still continue to see a future that isn't going to change. It's probably going to be that hybrid that you alluded to, Mike, that I think we're going to see more of. So I think it's all speculation at this point, and we can only just keep moving as best as we can.
Brad, any final thoughts from you?
Yeah, I think 2020 continues to still look strong. Obviously we saw a slight dip in some of the GDP, and everybody's, the economists are trying to figure out what's going to change. But in our industry, we're accustomed to these cycles. And so we're just spending a lot of time listening to our clients and understanding what's changing, whether it be industrial, it be office, it be retail. And, just trying to stay alongside with them in terms of what's changing in their business and their supply chain, and how does the real estate market adjust to that. But I think if you think back 3 months, everybody was probably thinking we'd be in a much different place than we are today. And I think that's a testament to some point, specifically I'll speak to Iowa, is people saying, hey, we've got to work together. We got to figure out how do we come out the end stronger and just work through it. So we're all fortunate that we're in the spot that we are today, and the rest of 2020 looks pretty positive.
All right. Well, just as I said we'd wrap it up, we got another question popped up over here to me. It said, how's the current availability of labor for construction projects? Any issues with getting labor?
I'll hit that one quickly. No problem getting labor. You think about unemployment dropped to 15, 16%, maybe in the construction industry. In the first 30 days, it might have dipped 12 to 13%, but half of that has come back. So there are plenty of people out there in the workforce, and the availability of labor hasn't been a problem. And I think that's also a testament to the industry of saying, we're going to create a safe working environment so they feel comfortable coming back.
I would agree.
All right. Well, I want to thank you both so much for joining us today. This has been really helpful. A lot of good information. Just as we wrap up here, thank you to the panelists for sharing. And we're going to share this information on the partnership's website. So we've recorded this session. If there's somebody you want to tell about it, or if you want to go back and listen, we will have it up the next day or two. And as a reminder, we have a lot of information out there at dsmpartnership.com//DSM forward. Please take a look at that. Gentlemen, thank you. And with that, we'll end the call.
Thank you.
Take care.